Hello, a very warm welcome to Middle East Matters. I'm Sanam Shantier. Coming up on this week's show, hundreds of members of the volunteer group, the White Helmets, escape Syria. They say prior to the rescue operation, they suffered systematic attacks by regime forces. The unofficial face and voice of Gaza, Mahmoud Abu Salama, is now a photographer in exile, like some 70,000 other Palestinians living in Egypt. Also coming up, Yemeni designer Nadia Atique joins us from Liverpool, her fashion line bringing together her two passions, football and religion. But first to southern Syria, which was witness to the evacuation of hundreds of the White Helmets civil defense group. While the Israeli-led operation has been hailed by the international community, the government in Damascus was quick to slam the move as, quote, criminal.
They're thought to have saved the lives of thousands of people, but this time it was the turn of the White Helmets to be rescued. Acting on the request of the international community, Israel conducted an overnight operation to evacuate volunteers and their families from a volatile war zone in southwestern Syria.
President Trump spoke to me, as did Canadian Prime Minister Trudeau and others, asking that we help to extract the White Helmets from Syria. The lives of these people, who have saved lives, were now in danger. I therefore authorized their transfer via Israel to other countries as an important humanitarian gesture.
The White Helmets had become trapped along the border with the Israel-occupied Golan Heights following an offensive by the Syrian military. The UK, one of the nations who requested Israel's help, hailed the operation as a ray of hope. The White Helmets are a civil defence group founded in 2013 with the task of rescuing civilians caught up in the Syrian war. Financed by public donations and foreign governments, the group has gained worldwide praise and in 2016 was nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. The Syrian regime and its allies have linked the organisation to jihadists and accused it of implementing a Western agenda.
This move is in line with the victories of the Syrian army. The White Helmets are tools at the hands of foreign powers, which are being defeated in the battlefield and therefore are withdrawing.
Around 98 volunteers and their families were rescued, bringing the total to over 400. They're now being held in refugee camps in Jordan, where they'll be assessed by the UN. Due to their high-risk status, they'll only stay there for a maximum of 3 months. Germany, Canada and the UK have all promised to help with resettlement efforts.
Now to the US administration, which is beating the drums of war with Iran. In an all-caps late-night tweet, Donald Trump warned Tehran that it would suffer consequences if it continued to threaten Washington, following a speech by his Iranian counterpart Hassan Rouhani. Iran's foreign minister Javad Zarif responded with a tweet of his own, "Color us unimpressed." This in an escalating war of words between the two nations, which have reached an all-time high since the US president announced the country's withdrawal from the multilateral nuclear deal back in May. Now, he's captured some of the most deadly violence and moving moments on the Gaza border. But today, freelance photojournalist Mahmoud Abu Salama lives in exile in Egypt, which is home to some 70,000 fellow Palestinians. Our team on the ground sent us this report.
Mahmoud fled Gaza fearing for his life, convinced that, had he stayed, sooner or later he would have been killed by Israeli security forces. He's already been wounded 3 times in Gaza. His work as a professional photographer placed him at the front lines of the Palestinian resistance. He left Palestine a few days ago and came to Cairo, where along the banks of the Nile, he's able to breathe more freely.
I feel relieved to be here. There is no Israeli occupation to suffocate and kill us, no occupation that deprives us of our most basic human rights. I am divided between sadness and joy. But today, if you have dreams and hopes, you have to leave. To leave Gaza is to leave hell.
Mahmoud left behind his wife and 2 sons, aged 3 and 5, a decision that was difficult to make. Now he only sees them online.
There is no electricity in Gaza. There is no way to communicate.
For 6 years, Mahmoud worked for major international media outlets. He risked his life to cover the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, including the Great March of Return border protests, where thousands of young Gazans were wounded and over 100 were killed by Israeli bullets.
This is the martyr Abdel Fattah Abdel Nabi. He's a child who was killed, and this is the last photo of him taken seconds before his death. He was shot in the head. This is a friend and colleague, a journalist. You're talking about photographing a friend at the same time as doing your job. It's very painful.
For Mahmoud, Cairo is just the first stop. With Palestinian friends, he's preparing to depart for Istanbul. But his ultimate goal is to settle in Europe and bring his family over to join him.
This is my Palestinian passport. This is the cause of all our problems. I hope that one day the whole world will respect this passport and will take care of those who hold this passport.
Today, Mahmoud's dream is to make Gaza's voice heard around the world.
It's now time for our weekly guest. Today I'm joined from Liverpool by Nadia Atique, a Yemeni designer who's living every fashion-obsessed 30-year-old's dream. She's already been profiled by Vogue magazine for bringing together her two passions in life. Her sportswear collection merges her love of her football club, Liverpool, and her religion, Islam. Nadia, thank you so much for speaking to us here on Middle East Matters. Now, your career started out in healthcare. Why did you make a transition to fashion?
So basically, whilst I was working for the NHS, I was made redundant. And once I was made redundant, I realised that now I had to follow something that I was truly passionate about. I've always been very creative. I always loved to style my family and my friends. And from there, I decided, I'm going to follow my passion for fashion. So it kind of went from there, really.
So a natural transition there. Now, of course, you are of Yemeni background, and there are so many topics that could have inspired you. But certainly this time, you decided to bring religion and football together in your latest fashion line.
I would have loved to base my collection on Yemen. However, this year marked my late father's 10-year anniversary. He was a massive football fan, and I was born and raised in Anfield. So Liverpool Football Club's been a big part of my life. So I decided to then look at something that related to my father and my passion for football, and that was the club. By fusing those two together and making a modest wear football collection, I thought was the perfect timing.
Well, today, of course, there are tens of modest fashion lines. Tell me, what makes the Nadia Atique brand stand out?
I think when you look at modest wear, obviously it's on the rise and you're starting to see it in a lot of different places. But what I found was all of the colours are very muted and the designs are very safe. Where for me, I've always been quite colourful and like vibrant colours. So I wanted to come away from that. And you don't really see a modest football collection, especially with now the bans being lifted in Saudi Arabia. I thought, what better time for women to embrace that? Women even from Saudi Arabia or here, Muslim women who like football and would want to wear something football related, why not?
Now, beyond religion, which you've just been talking about, which inspires your fashion line, what kind of connection do you have to Yemen?
Well, my family, my parents were born and raised in Yemen, but they've been in the UK for over 40 years. My extended family, so like my grandparents and my aunties and uncles used to visit a lot when I was younger. So I always had that bond, and my mum was very traditional. She came from like the village of Malach, and my dad was from Aden. So I had the fusion of both. It was like the best of both worlds. And obviously being raised in the UK. When I did go to visit my family in Yemen, I'd say in 2007, it was a massive culture shock for me, because although I had that connection with Yemen, I was still very much a British Yemeni. So although it was very different and there was the culture shock, I fell in love with the country. And my 2-month trip then turned into a year's trip. So it was amazing, but unfortunately, due to the circumstances in Yemen right now, I'm unable to visit.
As you just mentioned, you haven't been to Yemen for a number of years, but you still have family in the country. What do they tell you about the state of Yemen? Very briefly, Nadia.
Yes, they do. I mean, they try and remain as positive as they can be, but I think there's just like a sense of fear and displacement for them, and they don't really know what's going to happen next, which is very sad to hear. It's very heartbreaking to know that your family is somewhere over there and you're so helpless. Like the forgotten war, no one wants to talk about and no one wants to do anything about.
Nadia Atique, Yemeni fashion designer from Liverpool. Thank you so much for joining us here on France 24. Now that's it for us this week. Don't forget you can contact us by visiting our Facebook page, Middle East Matters France 24, or you can drop us a tweet. Thank you for watching.